Welcome to A Pair of Bookends, the book club you can carry anywhere. I'm your host, Hannah MacDonald, and I'll be bookending the conversation with some of the most exciting voices from the bookish world. Hello, lovely bookends. There is no new episode this week, so I thought I'd give you all a sneak peek into a recent Patreon episode. You can find us via patreon.com/a pair of bookends, and on there you can gain an exclusive episode a month, early access to all episodes, and have the opportunity to submit questions to authors. The cost is less than £3 a month, but I have also now introduced a pay what you can option for a much lower price. There'll be no questions asked, as I know firsthand how difficult money can be at times, but we do offer the Patreon option as a way for us to make money in order to bring you extra content. So if you are able to, please do subscribe there. I hope you enjoy this sneak peek into Patreon. It is about the Booker Prize. Emma and I decided to record an episode all about the Booker Prize longlist, the books that we chose to read off the longlist, and our thoughts on what would make the shortlist. And when this episode goes out, the shortlist will have been announced 2 days before, so we will already know. I hope that you enjoy listening to us wangle on about it, and I hope if you're able to, you'll consider subscribing to our Patreon, which again, you can find us via patreon.com/a pair of bookends. Enjoy the episode. Welcome to A Pair of Bookends Patreon exclusive episode, where today we will be chatting about the Booker Prize Longlist 2024.
2024.
2024. I'm your host and hopefully new bookish pal Hannah MacDonald, and here with me
I'm Emma Hinds.
This is writer
reader,
extraordinaire, reader
owner of cats.
reluctant best friend to me.
No, very, very lucky best friend.
So this was supposed to be the August episode, but we're going to ignore that we're a couple of days late. I am getting this out the day of recording, so I'm sorry, lovely patrons, that I'm 2 days late to bringing this to you. But August was quite chaotic. I had a show, I was working my gazillion jobs, and you don't mind me saying that
My life fell apart, yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say that, but
No, it's fine. No,
well,
I have.
Emma has the joys of her health, so
Yes, I have a persistent chronic illness, which last month, decided to just kind of drop through the trapdoor of my life. So yeah, that was really fun.
Yeah, especially when you've got edits and deadlines and all
and
of
a
that to
holiday
do
that you
alongside
don't
it.
go on because you're
No.
too ill to do it.
The worst. But we are here to chat books and the Booker Prize longlist.
We love the Booker Prize long list.
So I feel like you know the Booker Prize better than I do.
Really?
Yeah, I feel like you do. And I know that like you've always said it would be your dream to like be on the Booker list. It's going to happen one day. Let's manifest that. But I have always felt a bit intimidated by it. I feel like it's like because it's such a prolific literary prize, and this is the first year where there's been so many books on there that I've been like, oh my God, there's actually quite a few that I want to read. Whereas normally I'm kind of like unsure if I'll vibe with them or not. So I'm interested what you think the Booker Prize does differently to other prizes.
Well, let's talk about the money.
Yes.
Let's talk about the fact that this is a prize with money and prestige. Not only is it money and prestige for those who are longlisted, shortlisted, and the person who wins, but it also takes money and prestige in order to be even on the long list, or even for a publisher to put a book that they've published forwards for the Booker. That takes significant money and resources. So money is one of the big things. It's interesting because the Booker, like the Women's Prize or the Dylan Thomas Prize, is for one piece of work. Which is interesting when you look at something like the Nobel, which is for like a body of work. So like, Olga Tokarczuk has won the Nobel, not just for Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead, but for like the body of her work.
Yeah.
So I think that's really interesting for a prize. It's also interesting to see at what point people win it in their careers.
Yeah.
So for Hilary Mantel, she won the Booker for Wolf Hall and Bring Up the Bodies.
Yeah.
And those books she's like 8 books into her career by then. You know, that's quite a long time in. So even though it's a book, it's an award dedicated to a single book, sometimes it does feel like an award that also reflects a person's career.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like for me, the fact that Enlightenment is on it this year by Sarah Perry, and she's had this. Enlightenment is her 5th or 6th book, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's interesting that it does sometimes feel reflective of a body of work without being for a body of work. Unlike something like a debut fiction prize, which, you know, can very much be for a debut.
Are there any debuts on it this year?
I don't know.
Interesting.
I don't know.
Let's go through them. So what we're going to do is we're going to read out the long list. So we're going to read out the titles and the author, and then the shorter summary, so that we're not taking ages doing this, unless we find one that we really want to read, and then we can get stuck into that. Okay, and then we'll break all rules. So do you want to start us off, Em?
Yeah, sure. So Wandering Stars by Tommy Orange, a tender, shattering story of generations of a Native American family struggling to find ways through displacement, addiction, and pain towards home and hope.
Interesting. I feel like I would like this.
This is not a debut.
It's not a debut.
No.
And I've heard a lot of good things about Tommy Orange. Martha from Waterstones in Manchester is a big fan of Tommy Orange. Their other book is There There. And I feel like this is a sequel, which is interesting.
Maybe it is a sequel. Yeah, I know that he's definitely written about these kind of things.
So he says, readers of Orange's classic debut, There will know some of these characters and will be eager to learn what happened to Orville Redfeather after the Oakland powwow. So, a sequel.
Or at least like connected characters, because that's kind of what Sarah Perry's done in Enlightenment.
But that's quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
For a sequel to go, well, if it's not a sequel, then I'm wrong. But if a sequel's been chosen, because I don't feel like that's quite a common thing, but I could be wrong.
I think it's probably likely to be like a connective narrative. So, you know, like it's in world, but it's not a direct sequel.
Okay.
So follow all the characters. But he was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize in 2019. So, you know, you do see like names that fall into, you see patterns, don't you?
Yeah.
Winning, looking at certain things then, or is coming to the attention of certain book prizes, then they might come to the attention of other book prizes.
Yeah.
Okay.
The next one is Wild Houses by Colin Barrett. A story of 2 outsiders striving to find themselves as their worlds collapse in chaos and violence. Wild Houses is the first novel from award-winning writer. So it's a debut. Okay, cool.
It's a debut, yeah.
Nice. Okay, that's good. But it's always interesting, I think, with debut authors, because I think it's also dependent on published by Jonathan Cape. So it's got to be the big guns, hasn't it, for the Booker? If it's a big publishing house, then a debut's got a chance.
He has had a short story collection out before, and he has won a lot of awards for that, including the Rooney Prize for Irish Literature. Hannah MacDonald.
Interesting.
I wonder what Rooney that could be.
How interesting. That's found themselves in their worlds as their worlds collapse in chaos and violence. Is that kind of dystopian then?
I don't think so. I think it's about like crime and life and violence in Ireland. Yeah.
I'm intrigued though.
Intrigued, yeah. Okay, next we have Held by Anne Michaels.
I really like that cover.
It is a very cool cover. In a narrative that spans 4 generations, moments of connection and consequence ignite and reignite as the century unfolds. And I will just say it starts in 1917 and seems to move through time and was longlisted. This was longlisted. Oh no, it's longlisted this year. Sorry, I thought it was previously been longlisted.
That's I'm not normally one for like war stories, I don't think. But then when it skips ahead, it says the return from war to North Yorkshire. So like I do like the Northern Roots situation. I can see ghosts written down.
Yeah.
A chance encounter in a pub by a railway, a hot bath with his lover on a winter night. Oh, okay, that's sounds like a bit of me.
Yeah, she's won a lot, this writer, Anne Michaels.
How do you know this? Have you
Because
scrolled down?
no, I just look at whilst you're like looking at the thing about the book, I'm looking at the thing about the author, so it's working quite well.
Nice. Okay. Creation Lake by Rachel Kushner is next. So, a woman is
Mm.
caught in the crossfire between the past and the future in this part spy novel, part profound treatise
Yes.
on human history. Spy novel doesn't really appeal to me. I've heard mixed things about this.
I'm not surprised that she's on here. I
Yeah.
knew I recognized her name, Rachel Kushner, because she's
She's
been
been nominated
nominated.
before.
Yeah, so she's been nominated for the Mars Room
Yeah.
and now for Creation Lake. So
Hmm.
that's interesting. And she's written a lot. Yeah, I'm not surprised to find her on the list, really. But yeah, it's not a book that immediately leaps out to me. I think so far the
No.
ones that leap out to me the most, I'm interested in probably Wild Houses and Held.
Yeah.
Um,
Agreed. Agreed.
okay. This Strange Eventful History
I
by
like that title.
Claire Masood or Masood. This strange eventual history charts the Khazar's unfolding story in a work of breathtaking historical sweep and vivid psychological intimacy. Starts in June 1940 as Paris falls to the
So
Germans.
this is another war novel.
Yeah, I mean,
Interesting.
this is the kind of book that catches the attention of the Booker Prize, I would say.
Yeah.
Big historical sweep family novels that are focused on like the change in society through like a small microcosm of a family, things that are like focused on global politics by looking through like one person's life or relationships. They definitely, that's the type of literary fiction that definitely seems to attract their attention.
That's interesting. Okay, next up, Playground by Richard Powers. So, Playground explores that last wild place we have yet to colonize and interweaves profound themes of technology and the environment and a deep exploration of our shared humanity. I think Richard Powers does a lot of stuff around the environment and nature.
Mm,
Oh my
mm.
God, I've just noticed the cover.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
I
I
knew
really
you
like
would
that
like that
cover.
cover. It's like for the readers, it's blue. It's like a splash of blue with a wave tail coming out of the
The
water.
water, and there's two faces in the tail.
Oh my goodness, I did not know this. He has been nominated for the Booker Prize 4 times.
Stop. That's crazy.
This is kind of like Leonardo DiCaprio in the Oscars, right? You have to think like how many times are you going to get nominated before you win?
That's true. I don't really know much about this, but I've heard good things about him as a writer.
Yeah,
He seems to be very well loved. So, intrigued.
yeah.
Next up, we
Next
have.
up, Enlightenment, which is the
Yay!
book I read
Yes,
this week. Enlightenment by Sarah Perry, a story of love and astronomy told over the course of 20 years through the lives of two improbable best friends.
I love that. And you are going to delve into that once we've got to the end of this list. So,
Yes.
we'll skip past that for
Yes.
now. We have each read one book off this list because we did not have time to read all.
Yeah, we're not
We're
insane.
not going to do that, so sorry. But yeah, we've each read one, so we will get to those. Next up, we have Orbital by Samantha Harvey. 6 astronauts rotate in the International Space Station. They are there to do vital work, but slowly they begin to wonder, what is life without Earth? What is Earth without humanity? Interesting.
This is of before we started doing this list just now, this was the one I'm most excited to read.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
why that surprises me.
I think just because it's a very short, I know it's a short novel and I don't know, it just interests me, especially
Mm.
at the moment with those astronauts stuck in space right now, which is very timely.
What?
Do you not know this?
No?
Oh my God, it's basically the making of a horror movie. But at the moment, there are two astronauts who were meant to go up for like 6 days, and there's been some kind of malfunction, and NASA have to leave them up there for like 2 years.
You're joking.
There's two people. Yeah.
Do they have what they need for 2 years?
They have what they need for 2 years. Although, apparently, according to a report from NASA, like today or yesterday, they've been hearing a strange sonar sound from within the spacecraft. It's like
I literally went to see the new Alien film last night.
it's literally like that.
What?
I
Oh my
know.
God, how have I missed this?
Anyway, so that's it. Maybe that's because that's happening right now. So,
That's crazy. That
um,
kind of appeals to me now you've said that. Next up, we have James by Percival Everett, which was one on the list that, aside from the one that I have read, was one that I really want to read, and I still am going to read that. So it's a profound meditation on identity, belonging, and the sacrifices we make to protect the ones we love, which reimagines the adventures of Huckleberry Finn. I believe you don't need to have read The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn in order to read this book, but I've heard so many wonderful things about Percival Everett's writing, so I'm really excited for that one.
Yeah, and he was shortlisted in 2022
Was he?
for
Was it
the
the trees?
trees.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that makes sense.
so yeah, it does make sense. Okay, The Safekeep by Yale van der Voorden. The
That was very good
Safekeep,
accent.
thank you. I don't know if it's correct, but an exhilarating tale of twisted desire, histories, and homes, and the legacy of one of the 20th century's greatest tragedies. So you'll
Another.
be able to tell us about that tragedy later.
This
Did you
one?
read this? Did you read this one? I know
No,
you
no, I
read
didn't read this
Hedgehog.
one. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's 15 years since the Second World War. Okay, so another thing around the war. They're loving the war. There's a bit of a theme on this
Hmm.
one. I do have a copy of this though, but it came very late, which is why this was going to be the one that I read, but it came too late and
Hmm.
I didn't get to read it, but I have got it on my shelf and I will be reading it.
Do you think
Um,
it's about the Holocaust? I think it might be. That's my guess.
Potentially.
If people talk about like the 20th century's greatest tragedies, I assume that
Yeah, that would make sense, wouldn't it?
yeah. Anyway, that'd be interesting. Interesting for
Yeah.
you to get around to eventually.
Yeah, so hopefully I'll be able to report back on that one.
Mm.
Next up, we have My Friends by Hisham Matar, an intensely moving novel about three friends living in political exile and the emotional homeland that friendship can provide. So, two people meet at university in Edinburgh, two Libyan 18-year-olds expecting to return home after their studies. Okay, so quite a
Isn't
political.
Yeah, it looks very interesting. He was
Yeah.
nominated, he was shortlisted for In the Country of Men in 2006.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so he was also he won the Pulitzer Prize in 2017 for his memoir, The Return.
Oh, amazing.
So
So
it's not a
that's a good
surprise
sign.
yeah, it's not a surprise to see him on this list.
Yeah.
But yeah, that I imagine that will be a very political, very prescient
Yeah,
novel.
for sure. I do want to read that now I've read that. I didn't, when I saw the cover, I was just like, it didn't like
Mm.
jump out to me. So, but that makes me want to read it. Next
Okay,
up,
Stoneyard Devotional by Charlotte Wood. The past comes knocking in Charlotte Wood's fearless exploration of forgiveness, grief, and female friendship. That sounds like it's going to be a bit of you.
yeah,
Let's
it
yeah.
does. And I've read The Weekend by Charlotte Wood, and that was really good.
Mm,
And I loved The Weekend because I don't think we get many books about, it's about like a group of older women that are friends, and one of their friends has died, and that's why they have this like little holiday to, well, weekend together to kind
mm.
of grieve their friend. So it sounds like she's got a bit of a theme in her work
And
of
she's an
grief and female friendship. Yeah,
Australian writer, isn't she? So it's
she
quite nice
is.
to see Australians showing
Yeah,
up.
for sure. So I'm intrigued by that. There's actually quite a few in here that I'm intrigued by. Um,
Intrigued.
Intrigued. Next up is the one that I read for this episode, which is Headshot by Rita Bullwinkle. Funny, propulsive, obsessive, and ecstatic, Headshot is equal parts subtle and intense as it brings us to the sidelines of the boxing ring and above and beyond it. I really enjoyed this one, but I will get into this in a moment. So, what's our thoughts on themes here for this list? Do we feel like there's a through line? Do we feel like there's a lot of different things going on?
Well, I think the Booker is always literary fiction.
Yes.
So you're obviously working within that. I
Hmm.
do think it's interesting that there are lots of books. There seem to be definitely more than two, maybe three books that are concerned with the turn of the 20th century.
Hmm.
So like 1900 through to like 1945,
Yeah.
like the First and Second World War, the pre-war era, and the in-between era. So that's interesting that that theme
Mm.
is coming back and emerging.
Yeah, for sure.
There's
And
only a little bit of like environment stuff, which is interesting.
yeah, but it feels like these are all books that sort of play with form
That's
and
possibly
style, like
true.
Creation Lake. It says it's like part spy novel, part something else. Playground seems to play around with this genre a little bit. Orbital, potentially, but I've not read it, so I can't confirm. But definitely
Mm.
Headshot. really plays with style.
It's in,
James is a reimagining of a story
yeah.
that we've already been told. So,
That's interesting actually, because
mm,
you do get those that come up obviously, but I think they're quite rare to have
yeah,
a reimagining of a fictional character
yeah,
particularly. So there have been books and the Booker Prize that reimagine mythical characters or reimagine historical characters.
hmm,
But I think it does say something about how we're starting to think about books like Huckleberry Finn
yeah,
when they were written, which was last century now, and that
yeah,
they're starting to maybe change in our minds in terms of being available for authors to reimagine,
yeah.
which is interesting.
Very interesting. Shall we dive into the books that we have read from the list?
Yes.
Would you like to go first?
I will talk for hours about enlightenment.
Okay, I'll have to cut you off.
Uh, no. Yeah, it's interesting that the blurb on the Booker Prize website focuses on friendship and astronomy.
Hmm.
I think those two things are there, but I don't think that's what this book is about. I think if I was writing a blurb for it, I would say this is about the conflict between not just like science and religion, which Sarah Perry is always very interested in, but between being gay and being religious. Like it's about that tug and pull and the contrast between those two things and what it's like to be a person who believes in God and has faith and is part of a church group that doesn't accept you, but you are still part of that group. So yeah, for me, it was obviously like incredibly profound and moving,
Yeah,
given my personal background and my experiences. But it's just beautifully written. And it is formically interesting as well, because you were just talking about form. So it's not all written in one style of prose. So it
hmm,
has the main character, Thomas. He is a journalist. He has a column in the local Essex newspaper. So his columns appear throughout the books. But there's also letters and diary entries from a woman who was an astronomer living in the last century. You know, there's emails and things like that. So it breaks up the narrative in that way, which is something I don't feel like she's done much before. So it was very
hmm.
interesting to see. And yeah, I loved it, honestly. I just loved it so much. I think it might be my favorite book by her, which is saying
Wow.
something. Yeah, because I loved The Essex Serpent, but I think this might be my favorite book by her.
And it made you cry.
It made me cry. Yeah, there's a bit when Thomas is talking to a ghost, which is a totally normal thing to do. And he says, "Do you think you lose your faith because your faith does not want you?" And I think that just kind of sums up my life, basically, and the experience of a lot of people who are gay and
Mm,
grow up in the church with this kind of feeling that you, no matter where you go or whatever you do, you've been given this gift of faith that you can't get rid of. And it isn't changed by the fact that the people who gave you the faith no longer want you.
hmm.
And that's a very conflicting place to live in.
Yeah,
And she captures that beautifully, and it's got tremendous pathos and beauty in it, which is all the things she does well. And I think it's just a really, she grew up Baptist as well, so I think it's just a really brave book. She's not afraid of ideas.
yeah.
She does write about characters and she writes about their feelings and their expressions, but she's not afraid of just writing about the ideas, about what it feels like to be caught between two philosophical positions
Hmm.
about the universe, which I find very compelling. So I had a thoroughly lovely time reading it. And yeah, it's definitely going to be a book that has my heart for a long time, I think.
I love that. That's made me
Mm.
want to read it. And I think
It's,
that
yeah.
line that you read out, like, I can definitely see how much that's resonated with you,
Mm.
obviously through knowing you as well as I do, but from, being an actor in like your plays and like knowing the sorts of things that your work concerns itself with. And I just know that those
Mm.
themes all really resonate with you. So,
Yeah. She
um,
also, it takes place over like 20 or 30 years, which is
right.
something that I am trying to get better at in my own writing, is writing large chunks of time. And
Hmm.
for my next adult book, that's my plan, is to try and write over a long period of time,
Yeah.
about 30 years, which I decided to do before I read this. And then reading this was just a real example for me of how it can be done
Yeah.
exceptionally well. And a really good example of like that kind of moving through time, massive narrative. So I think in a way, Enlightenment sort of fits in with some of the other books that we on the list that we looked at that are these big family epics that span over 20 or 30
Yeah.
years. and look at changing culture. It has similar themes, I feel
Mm-hmm.
like. Yeah. So I think it slots in very nicely on the list.
For sure.
I don't know if it will win. She has not
Yeah.
won prizes like some of the other people have, and she's never been shortlisted or longlisted before for the Booker. But I would like her to win. I think it's a beautiful book.
And she's a very loved author. She's got quite a big fan base, hasn't she?
Yeah, yeah,
From the Essex
yeah.
Serpent, especially.
She's
Amazing.
also a fellow chronic illness writer, so we love that.
We do love that. We
Okay,
do.
tell me about Headshot.
So, Headshot by Rita Bullwinkle was absolutely brilliant. I honestly believe that I could have read this in one sitting had I
Mm.
had the time. I really want it. Like, it's one of those books where you feel kind of annoyed when you've got to put it down because you're like, no, I just want to stay with it. It's only 240 odd pages, so very short, but I feel like the book only needs to be that length. It's such a pacey book, and you are within this tournament. I think it's called the Daughters of America, like boxing tournament, and it's all these young girls. They've come from all over America to compete in these boxing championships. And it's so cleverly written in the sense that you are in the ring with them and you are 1 second you're in one of their heads and they're reflecting on some issue with their family, and then they're thinking about how they're going to approach their opponent and what they're thinking about doing next, and they're kind of observing their opponent, and then you're suddenly in the opponent's head
Mm.
and they're reflecting on something in their own life and they're also thinking about how they're going to approach this, and you learn like how much or how little this match means to each of these characters. And it goes from the semi-finals to the semi-finals, maybe the quarterfinals to the semi-finals to the finals. And it's all played out over like, I think it's like a weekend, but you just go through the matches and you learn so much about them through them doing this. And it's really like the physicality of it is just amazing to read. I just think it's so cleverly done. I feel like Rita Bullwinkle, the author, must either have experience with boxing or must have like gone to watch a lot of boxing or like researched it, because just the physicality and the way that the matches are written are just so well done. It feels very like visceral, and I feel like you must have like a really extensive knowledge of it in order to write in that way. But I just thought it was like genuinely brilliant. I do have a quote as well that I want to read out because there was so much in this about like girlhood and about the things that bother us, other words bother us as we're getting older. And there's also moments where like where it's kind of speaking in future tense. Is that you can say? Would you say future tense? No.
About the future.
Yeah, like speaking
Yeah,
about the
yeah.
future. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
It'll be like safe that like there's a character called Rose. It might be like, and this is not giving any spoilers because I'm not saying what actually happens. I'm just giving an example. But it might be like when Rose gets older, she'll no longer be a boxer. She'll have gone on to marry, and she'll have got and it like looks forward to what their lives will look like in the future and whether actually this match will mean anything to them in however many years forward, which I thought was really cool to do. I'm going to read this quote, which is like right at the end, and it's not giving any spoilers, but I just really liked this quote. Girls are born with all of the eggs they will ever make. Tiny future fighters are nested inside the infant bodies of baby girls. Men are dead ends, but girls are infinite, backwards and forwards, like looking at one's reflection in two facing mirrors. It is impossible to say where the first female athlete began and where they will end. The Daughters of America tournament will not go on forever. The Women's Youth Boxing Association, like so many institutions before it, will crumble and then resurrect itself with a new face. And I just really liked that.
Yeah.
I just thought the prose was beautiful. It was just so cleverly written. I really, really want you and John to read this because I
Okay.
want your thoughts and feelings on it.
Thoughts
But
and feelings.
I'm really glad that I read it because I was going to read The Safekeep or James. But I've heard so much about this and I think it's rightfully getting the attention it deserves. Like it's really, really good.
It's getting buzz.
Yeah, and it deserves it. I
Is
thought that was
she
quite a short summary.
this is her first big prize, isn't it? I might be
Rita
completely
Bullwinkle
wrong.
is the author of the short story collection Belly Up, which won a
Oh, there you go.
2022 Whiting Award. Her writing has been published in The White Review, Bomb, Noon, and Guernica. among others. She's a recipient of grants and fellowships from MacDowell, Brown University, Vanderbilt University, Hawthornden Castle, and the Helen Wurlitzer Foundation. Both her fiction and translation have been nominated for Pushcart Prizes. She's an editor at large for McSweeney's, the deputy editor of The Believer, a contributing editor for Noon, and an assistant professor of English at University of San
Yeah.
Francisco. Oh, so this Headshot was her debut novel.
Yeah, it seems like a lot. It seems like the debut novels that you find on this list are often debut novels from people who have written short story collections or a few short story collections before they move to debut
Yeah,
novels, which I imagine is not actually that surprising
no.
for this kind of list.
But I think her short story collection wasn't published in the UK until Headshot did so well.
That's
Um,
interesting.
and the cover, because the cover they've done is like fairly similar to Headshot, it's like in conversation with that cover. So I think the buzz from this has meant that the short story collection has also got buzz because people have become like big fans of her work. But I just think it's such a great book, and it was so interesting to read about like how like violent women can actually be, which I don't feel like
Yeah,
we explore enough, and these like thoughts that women can have that are quite like complex. Like these women are like not faultless girls at all. They are very aggressive. They really want to, some of them really want to hurt their opponent. And I just think it was so cool to read female characters like that because we don't always see that in women.
that's true. Yeah.
So I found that really interesting. And I just think, like I said before, girlhood is such a, being like a teenage girl is such an interesting time, especially, you know, in terms of your body and how you identify. And yeah, just the fact that it's such a physical sport,
Mm.
boxing, and it being in conversation with a teenage girl's body. I just thought it was really cool the way that was
Yeah.
written.
It's also such a kind of timely and prescient book given the Olympics and everything that went on with boxing,
Yeah.
women's boxing in the Olympics.
Yeah.
So that's definitely
That's
some
so true. I don't know why I didn't even think of that.
yeah, an
That's really
interesting
true.
moment to be reading it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really cool to read about. There's a character that has had to like drive 4 days in order to get to this tournament, and she's like slept in a car, and she's used up all this
Mm.
money that she's saved up just to compete in this tournament. But then there's like another character that she's competing against where she's from, like she's got sisters that are also boxers, and her family are like so invested in this sport and are putting, or like they're from a more like middle class
Mm.
background, and they have the money and the means to kind of fund their children taking part in this, and it does have meaning to them but in a different way.
Yeah.
So it was just really cool to read. I've said cool a lot, but it was really cool to read about these different types of people in America and how like class is so different in America, and just what this sport means
Mm.
to these young girls and how they manage to compete in these things, but they've also got so much else going on in their lives. And some of them
Yeah.
have been through like quite traumatic things, and they come to this, and it's how it affects the way that they're fighting. It'll come to the forefront of their minds when they're in the middle of a fight.
I was gonna say, so from the big list, like how do you think it's gonna do?
I think it's got a chance of winning.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
cool.
I'm gonna go with that. But should we guess our winners?
I think it's good. It's really hard to guess winners. I think we
You're like, Hannah, no.
it's really hard to guess winners, especially when we haven't read, but we could guess shortlist.
Yes. How many would
Yeah.
shortlist be? This is 12, isn't it?
Doesn't it go by half?
Oh, it's the longest of 13. 13 is such a random number. Why is it
How
called
long
the
is
book a dozen if it's 13 books? Guys, you've lied.
So
Well,
what does it go to? Does it go to 6?
let's say 6.
Yeah.
I think James will be in there.
Do you reckon?
I think James and Headshot for sure.
I'm hoping that Enlightenment makes it into the 6.
Yeah.
But I feel like one of the sort of time moving across generations one is going to be up there. So I think either The Strange Eventful History by Claire Messud or Held by Anne Michaels will be up there. So that takes us up to 5. And then the last spot, I would be really surprised if My Friends doesn't end up
Yeah,
in the
actually,
shortlist.
that feels quite relevant right now as well.
Yeah. But we don't know.
We
We
don't
don't
know.
know because it's not, it's a judging panel, the
Yeah.
same as everything else. So,
Oh, yeah, and the shortlist of 6 books is being announced this month on the 16th of September.
well, these are our guesses.
Interesting.
Yeah. And out of having looked at them all, like just your immediate reaction, if you had to read another one tomorrow from the list, not Enlightenment or Headshot,
Yeah.
what one would you be picking up? If the stack was put in front of you, who are you picking up?
I'm stuck. I want to say The Safekeep because I've got it.
No, 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 no. Okay. No, no, no.
James. I'll say James. I
Yeah.
think
Like the
James.
one that you're like, if I had a pile of these all in front of me, they're free. I can read whichever one I want tomorrow. I've got the day off. I've got nothing to do, but I have to read one of them. Which one do I want to read?
Yeah, James.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, what about you?
I think Held.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I think maybe Held.
Interesting.
Which is interesting because when we started
Chris
it was
Gow.
Orbital.
Yeah.
Go
Ah,
away.
interesting. Well, maybe we will be returning in a future episodes to mention those books. Who knows?
Who
Who knows what will
knows?
happen? Maybe in next month's monthly culture roundup, we can have a quick segment on the shortlist and
Yeah,
talk
just
about
to see if how
our
right we
thoughts
were
and
or
feelings.
how
Yeah,
wrong.
let's see how right we were.
Totally.
So that is our summary of the Booker Prize long list of 2024, which I'm really glad that we've done an episode on this, and I'm really glad that we got to read those books because I feel like the Booker Prize is the one that I have read the least. There's definitely books off previous long lists that I've read, but I don't necessarily see Booker Prize longlisted or Booker Prize shortlisted or Booker Prize winner on a book and go, oh, I'm definitely going to read that then.
Mm,
I'm more likely to do that with the Women's Prize for some reason, but
yeah.
that's not like you, is it? You,
It's slightly different. I think the Women's Prize, I don't think they hold as tightly to like the literary fiction definition, the
right.
Women's Prize. I'm not sure though. I would have to look into it. But
Interesting.
I feel like that's another reason is that because the Booker Prize is so much literary fiction
Yeah, yeah.
rather than, sci-fi or
Hmm.
just fantasy or something like that. So yeah.
So that is our Patreon exclusive episode.
Yeah.
We will be returning this month with a monthly culture roundup. I am going to try and fit that in before I go on holiday on the 27th. So yeah, we'll be returning with some recommendations. If there's anything that you want us to speak about specifically, please let us know. And we're still toying with what we can do for October. I would like us to do a Sally Rooney episode, whether Emma will
I'll do
let
a
me
Sally
or
Rooney.
not.
I will do a Sally Rooney episode.
So maybe that will be October because it comes out at the end of September. So that
Mm,
may very well be our October Patreon episode. But
yeah.
if there's anything else you want us to speak about, please do give us a recommendation in the comments. We are more than open to suggestions of books you want us to read or themes, things you want us to chat about. But thanks so much for being a Patreon and for listening to us ramble on. I am very grateful, and we will chat to you next month.
Yeah. Happy reading.
Happy reading. Goodbye.
Bye.